Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podolin, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hello, Up My Hockey. Welcome back or welcome to the podcast. Today's guest is Brad Larsen, the current assistant coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Brad's in his 6th season as the assistant coach in Columbus. This is after previously being the head coach in the American League for the Springfield Falcons and assistant coach there prior. Brad had a 294-game NHL career where he instantly upon retirement got into the world of coaching. So he's been there for the last 10 seasons. Brad and I have a long storied history because we ended up winning a Pee Wee provincial championship together back in our Vernon Minor hockey days. A town of 30,000 people produced 3 NHLers from that team: Brad Larsen, Matt Higgins, and myself. So we go way back. I've seen this guy tear a gym apart, tear a dryland apart. He has been a beast his whole life. He's been a hard worker, and he's got the most out of his skill set. And that's something that Danny Briere in a previous episode talking about Brad even said, that Brad was a guy that was always an amazing leader, a great teammate, and somebody that took his craft very seriously and got the most out of the gifts that were given to him. He is now using that philosophy and that inner makeup to help Columbus be better and to help young athletes within their organization be better. And he did that in Springfield as well. We talk about Brad's time in junior, where he was spent 4 years with the Swift Current Broncos. We talk about his draft year. He was drafted twice. Not many players are drafted twice. Brad was drafted twice, first in 95, 53rd overall by the Ottawa Senators, and then again in 97, 87th overall by the Colorado Avalanche. We covered that and how that affected his career. And we also talk about his World Junior experience, where he won 2 gold medals. The first was in 96 with me in Boston. We won gold together, which was the 4th in a row. And then he came back that next year and captained the Canadian World Junior team and led them to their 5th gold medal in a row. And Danny Briere was on that team. So very cool that we have a few past World Junior champions on the show, and it's an honor to have a current NHL assistant coach on there to share his knowledge with us today. He has lots here to offer. I will let you know that Brad took the time after practice one day, and he was juggling the interview along with father duties, so he had to leave the rink and get into his car. So different components of the episode are in different places, but it all is one continuous conversation and one that you will enjoy and I'm sure get a lot out of. So without further ado, I bring you Brad Larsen. All right, Lars, we have Brad Larsen here, an old timer for me, old time friend, going way back to the Vernon days, and now the assistant coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets. And what a journey in between those two spots. And we'll try and touch on a bit of it here. But first of all, Lars, thanks for taking the time out of your day and joining us here at Up My Hockey.
Yeah, no problem. I look forward to this.
Awesome. Well, I know you got a lot of stuff to share, which is great, and we have a few things in common, which is fun to start off with. And I think a lot of people that are listening are either young guys, Lars, trying to get to where you were able to play and do some of those things, whether it be major, junior, whether it be be a pro, or even now, I mean, in the coaching ranks like you are, or it's parents listening. And I think it's cool to bring it back to Pee Wee, because 89, 90. I know for me personally, winning the Pee Wee provincial championships from a little town like Vernon, it is something that we laugh about and we smile about, but it still isn't. It was a big deal for me. I mean, I went to the NHL, scored some goals, did some things in hockey, but that's still a special spot for me. And the fact that we were on that team together with another guy that ended up going to the NHL by the name of Matt Higgins is pretty special. What do you remember from that year, Lars?
You know, it's funny you say that, because it's, back then the hockey was just the purity of the game, the love of the game, and you're not thinking NHL, career. You're not thinking, there wasn't pressure. It was just love the game days, and the best part was going to tournaments and spending time in hotels and swimming in pools and having McDonald's for the third time of the day. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we complain about playing back to backs here in the NHL. Back then, we're playing 3 games in a day, and you wouldn't think twice about it. You'd love it,
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's funny how you drum up these memories and how it was exciting. I mean, I think the parents, they had a blast. I mean, we just played. We went and we're fortunate to win as a group, and winning always brings a group together. Doesn't matter what age it is, and so yeah, I think it's just fond memories of just enjoying the game of it.
Yeah.
Exactly what it was. It's just the purity of playing, and it was a
Yeah.
blast.
And to be able to win is a special thing, and it kind of galvanized a group. I know at any level. I mean, just because there are guys from that team that I still see, and there's that common bond there, right? Of like, geez, we did this. There was a time when we were 13 years old, and we were the best in the province. The other part I'm gonna touch on is because first of all, I mean, playing the NHL is hard. Right. I mean, it just is. I mean, the stats are out there. It's the fraction of the fraction of the fraction to get a chance to throw in an NHL jersey. And that's just the way it is. But what is amazing from that team is that there was 3 of us from a town of 30-some thousand at the time that ended up being able to wear an NHL jersey. And why I like that is just because don't let anybody tell you no. Like it can happen. It's not like it was special in the moment. It was a group of kids that played hard and did the right things, and some of us were able to get there. And I just hate when I hear it again and again and again. Oh, why you don't think like that? Don't think you're going to play in the NHL. It doesn't matter whether you do or you don't, but have the dream, because you never know, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with dreaming big. I think there's so much to be said of that. I mean, and you don't want to put handcuffs or constraints on yourself, and especially as young, like, shoot for it. Why wouldn't you go for it? But, I've always say this, hockey will get serious enough, at some point. And I think some of what happens now with really young athletes, and they're not multi-sport athletes. It's so single sport driven. And, if you catch someone's eye at age 8 or 9, they want you to, do extra stuff in the summer and specialized skating and shooting. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not going to deter a kid if he really is dying to do that. But I'm going to say this, there's something to be said for playing other sports and how that, there's hand-eye coordination in baseball. There's cardio and foot and ball for soccer. There's, other sports, I think they turn you into an overall athlete, which does translate into a better hockey player at some point. And there will be a time where you're going to have to pick a sport, as we all did, and you do it because you love it. But I think getting away when you're young and being hungry and excited to play that sport again, rather turning it into a job early on, and I think you don't want it to be a job. I think we're fortunate, and we're all at different levels. I think, obviously you were the elite talent out of our group, and then there was me and Matt Higgins, and we were good players for Pee Wee. We weren't exceptional. We weren't, and everybody develops at different ages. So, I think just being patient and enjoy it, and if you're driven and you love the game, you'll find a way. You'll find a way, and sometimes guys develop later than others. I mean, that's just how it is. So if someone's telling you no, 12 or 13 to tell somebody no that they can't play in the NHL is ludicrous to me. But as a parent and people with your child, one, make it fun. Hey, you need a work ethic. There's certain things that in playing in team sport, I think that drive you in life. The camaraderie, working together, and you do have to be disciplined in certain aspects of your life. So all these things that come in, these are life skills that you want to embrace, and you want them. They're going to learn some tough lessons along the way, but that's part of it. And if that comes to fruition, that you actually have a chance to get drafted, play in the American League, get a college scholarship, or go to the NHL. I mean, that's just kind of icing on the cake for me. But it's if you hate the game, if it turns into a job at 8, 9, 10 years old, man, it's going to be really hard to drive yourself at 18, 19, 20 when it really truly becomes a grind.
Right. I think that's interesting that you bring that up. I'm from your philosophy. I mean, I have three kids of my own now, which I think you know, and they all like hockey, right? And kind of different degrees of maybe excitement about it. You know, like my oldest could probably be on the ice every single day, and my youngest maybe 5 days a week, and he's six. You know, and my middle guy who's really good, which is kind of, I mean, he likes being there, but he's not asking me to take him to extra ice, right? And it's all okay, right, for me, and I like it to be the other side of the fence where my oldest Hudson is begging me to go, and he has to ask me a few times, and then I'll take him, right? So I'm from that side of the fence, but then you hear these stories, and I know parents struggle with it, like PK Subban's dad, who said, I mean, he would wake both of them up at like 10 o'clock at night for extra ice, even if they didn't want to go, because you know what, kids don't necessarily know what's good for them at the time, and you gotta be that driving force for them. And you know, and then so there's PK and Malcolm, and they're in the NHL, and parents are going, well, maybe that's the way, you know. And again, you already said it. I don't know if there is a way. Like, there's a way that I'm feeling comfortable with, and there's a way that you're comfortable with. But mind you, we have a history in the game, right? So we can kind of feel pretty solid with where we're standing there. Like, what do you say to the guy who's got a 9-to-5 job, who's just doing the best he can for his son, and just wants to keep up? You know, I mean, maybe he's got a good kid, he's got a good player. He thinks, man, there might be a chance, but I know nothing about this. Everyone else is doing spring hockey. They're doing camps all the time. They got all these guys. Is there a message for that person to be like, chill out, don't worry about it, or should they be trying to keep up?
Yeah, I think so. I'm more in the, and maybe because I've been through it, you know, and it's easy to say what that looks like, what the career looks like, the grind of it, you know, what the toll it takes in your body. To me, I peel it back like this: you have kids, and now being a father, and you know, you only have so much time together as a family, right? So if you're going to go that route, you better be doing it for the right reasons. And it's not because, well, I want my kid to be an NHL. You don't know if your kid's going to be an NHLer at 11 or 12. I'm sorry, you just don't. Even if they're a great Pee Wee player or Bantam, you have no clue, because the game changes so much, and 2 to 3 years of development for somebody can change so fast. So don't do it for you. Make sure it's the kid that's wanting this. You know, I think you got to be really careful with that. But don't lose sight of what sport is for. Like, that is my biggest message with family. Like, sport, there's tons of great values to learn in sport, but you know, to just get your kid involved in more and more and more and more, and you'll never get that time back at the dinner table. You never get that time back of just you and him hanging out, going to a movie together, doing, you know, to me, that outweighs any sport that's, you know, that family time. So, and again, I'm not, people that want to go that route, there's nothing wrong with it. Just make sure your priorities are straight, and that the kid is, sometimes the kid doesn't know what he wants. We all know that, but at the end of the day, he's got to be the one that just loves it and wants to do it. And sometimes you may have to pull him away from it. You know, like you said, your oldest, he just wants to go. Let him do something else. You know, maybe he loves something else. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, that when you look at the numbers of who's going to make the NHL, when there's 700 jobs, just over 700 jobs, and there's what, 3, 4, 5 billion people in the world, like, the numbers don't add up. They just don't. The odds, like, if someone told me that when I was 15 years old, I'd be like, I have no chance, you know? So it's the odds of your child making it are very slim. That's not to deter you. It doesn't mean they won't make it, but you know, you got to be really careful how hard you push and what you're sacrificing when you're pushing them towards something like that, you know? So to me, the family time and making sure that you're involved in their lives in the right way. You'll never regret spending too much time together. You'll never regret having too many dinners as a family together. You know, and sport does bring families together, but you know, if you have multiple siblings, you know how it is. Somebody's left behind, and or they're getting dragged along, and you know, it can be miserable. For my poor older brother, he was off every weekend somewhere else, you know. So it's a tough dynamic, and I think I like to believe most parents have the right purpose for doing what they're doing, but you know, you're only that person knows, and make sure you're doing it for the right reason. Don't do it.
I agree with you on the right reasons. I think the expectations is big, right? If your expectation is to teach your kid, you know, how to be his best or her best, you know, like what it takes to do that, like aligning your habits with a goal or a dream. You know, I think those are good life lessons. Those are things that you can consolidate around as a family. You know, it's something that you can guide as a parent. But it can't be we're doing this only, and we're only successful if you make it here.
Yeah.
Right. Or this only works, or this only values you if you get that Division I scholarship or you play pro. I mean, that's where it gets confused. I mean, that's where it's not beneficial to anybody, right? Because that's just where the numbers don't add up. But if you're doing the right things to get there, I mean, whether he plays pro or not, like he's going to use that in whatever aspect of life he does later on. I think parents need to be careful with that too. So I'm glad we agree on that, because it's an interesting thing now. I mean, you see it more and more now as the assistant coach, I'm sure, of the Blue Jackets, where like these guys, like I've heard stories like these NHL athletes don't know how to throw a football. Like
it blows me away. I've watched, and I won't name names, but I've watched them shoot a basketball or throw a ball, and I'm dumbfounded. I'm like, really? Like I'm no 5-star athlete in every sport, but I learned how to throw a ball. I learned how to kick a soccer ball, and not because anybody. That's what you did. You know, summertime. All right, let's get outside. Let's go do some things. You know, I wasn't a single sport guy, and I just like to be active. It didn't matter what it was, and I enjoyed playing baseball. I enjoyed playing soccer. I enjoyed let's go shoot hoops and you know, downtown at the school, and we'll shoot for like 3 hours and play 2-on-2. It was a blast. You know, so. Again, I think all those things help you being a well-rounded athlete, and your coordination, your hand-eye, all these things that are important for hockey, because a lot of it's balance. And yeah, it blows me away actually to see how some of these guys are at hockey and how bad they are at other sports.
And that I mean, I'm sure people listening to right now are saying, well, I mean, there's proof that you know, you don't need to be a multi-sport athlete because these guys have made it and they can't throw a football. Like, to me, it's an interesting question. Like, is that the new way? Like, do you need to be multi-sport to be exceptional, to be world class early on? Like, there's some countries that are saying that they don't even, like Norway, for instance, in the Olympics, they don't allow anyone in that country until they're 12 to focus on a single sport. And look how many gold medals they won. And there's like, not even 1 million people there, I don't think, maybe 1 million. Yeah. So like there's different sides of the fence. But when you see these guys coming up, and I mean, that's the new age, right? Spring hockey, summer hockey, winter hockey. People are pulling their kids out of minor hockey and putting them in the elite leagues. Like it's getting really crazy on the grassroots level. And I'm sitting here, and it sounds like you are too, kind of arguing for the fact of let's have some balance here. But the environment is what it is. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe we'll just switch gears, but I do think it's a little bit nuts. And I think that people got to slow down, especially at the young ages, right? Like you said, there's going to be a time, there's going to be a time where you just have to. I mean, because the commitment with whatever level you're competing at is going to demand your time. And until that happens, I think you should protect your time, right?
But again, it goes back. What's the goal? Like what?
Yeah.
Why is every parent going, my son's going to play National Hockey League, or he's going to play, or minimum college scholarship? I mean, the percentages of just even getting a college scholarship is really low. So there's no harm in them playing other sports. Like, again, especially as a young age, like it'll get serious enough when it gets serious enough. And you'll know that time, because you don't have enough time to do everything.
Yeah,
but it's just, let the kid enjoy life first. It's not the end of the world.
So we had a Pee Wee championship. I left. I went to Sherwood Park that next year. I was in Bantam. You had another year left of Pee Wee. And then you ended up playing as a 16-year-old in the Western Hockey League, which was a huge accomplishment in and of itself. Yep. And I believe, because it was just right at that funky time where I think my Bantam draft year was the first year, like most of the guys who were in it. There was only 3 of us that had already been listed, like myself, Jeff Friesen, and I think Jason Weimer had been listed already. So it was almost everybody was available. So I would guess that your year for the Bantam draft, everyone was available, correct?
Yes. Yeah, they had a whole draft. Yeah, I remember getting drafted.
Do you remember anything about that? Like, do you remember, was there any type of, I don't know, like did you know scouts were watching? Were you worried about your ranking? I know like right now it's crazy again, right? They're ranking guys and people are worried about it. And I just want to kind of, because I know there's guys listening here that they are Bantam age and they're like, oh, this is my draft year. This is a big deal. Sure. I'm trying to get some ice time and get noticed. Like, what do you remember about your draft year there for the WHL?
Well, again, I was probably clueless because I just didn't know any better. I played junior B at 15, and played in Nelson and did that. So I was playing against guys who were 21, 20. Like it was a crazy league back then. It wasn't skill wasn't the main thing there. You know, it was a little bit nuts, but I do remember I talked with a lot of teams. I remember scouts coming and talking to me, and I was like, again, I'm just clueless. Like, oh, okay, yeah, you know, and I guess I think one of the only teams I didn't talk to was Swift Current, and they're the ones who drafted me. So it's just kind of funny how it works. And, you know, I ended up getting drafted as Swift Current and then going from junior B and playing as a 16-year-old, kind of an underage guy. And yeah, then it just started, and it was, you know, it was a man's league back then. It was a whole different ball of wax going from that to Western Hockey League. I was pretty wide-eyed, and yeah, it was a crazy experience.
That's a jump. That's interesting though. Like, why don't we touch on junior B just for a second? Because there's a lot of questions that I get, right? Like, what's the right route from my kid or even the kid? Where am I supposed to go? Who am I supposed to play for? And they have all these academies now, and there's so many options, and I get it. It can be overwhelming. At 15, for you to leave home and have your dad say and your mom say, hey, you know, I support this. Like, where did that come from, and why did you think that was the right place for you to be?
Well, seriously. So I was trying out for it was Kelowna, I think it was the Spartans at that time. They were junior A. So I was trying out for them. And I remember the coach must have talked to my dad, said, yeah, I think he can make our team as a 15-year-old, but he's probably not going to play a lot. And at the same time, you know, during those camps, there was junior B guys or coaches and stuff. And they talked to my dad and said, look, he can come to Nelson. He's going to play. He's going to play a ton. And so we talked about it, and really it came down to, where are you going to play? You know, and I'm like, Dad said I'm going to play a lot more there. That's what I did. So I might have made the junior A team, you know, which would have been more about my ego and been like, wow, I'm on this great team, or I'm young. You got to play, you know, when you're young, and there's no benefit to playing on a really good team when you're really young and not playing. To be a young guy and not play is just going to hurt you. So I took a step back, and I think it really helped me. I was playing against older guys, and yeah, I mean, it was a crazy league. Don't get me wrong. It was nuts. And I seriously, I look at my parents now. I have kids now, and I look at them like, and I see a 15-year-old go, you let me go live with someone. Oh, you guys are out of your mind, you know? So again, what is the right route? You know, again, that was a number of years ago. So things have changed, you know, quite honestly now. If my son or daughter were good enough, and I would probably push it, I'd be like, go to college, go get a degree, you're not going to have a bad time there. If you're good enough, you'll make it. You know what I mean? Just because education is so important, and it was important back then, but it was just a different, schools couldn't talk to you, and you didn't, you know, it was just a different time. So that's just my personal opinion. That doesn't mean I'm right. I'm just saying that's where I'd push for, because of the importance of an education, and really because how few people make it. You know, it's hard to make it. So yeah, for me, and going through that, like, I was 15. I think I was homesick for one day, and then I loved it. I'm like, this is great. You know, it worked for me, and it worked for me at that time of my life. And you know, he went through a lot of crazy stuff at a young age, but you know, and for career wise, it worked out really well for me.
Right. Yeah, that is a super interesting. That's not for everybody, and that I mean, a lot of guys are going through that. I mean, 16's even young. I mean, I did it too. I had the benefit of having my mom come with me when I was a 15-year-old, and I went to Penticton, right? So had a chance to play with Paul Career there as a 15-year-old, and like you said, in a really good league with some men, and it was a tough league, and it was hard, and you're in a new school, and you're trying to figure that whole thing out, and you're just getting your driver's license, and you know, like, it was. Walking into Merritt, are you kidding me? Like, you know what I mean? Like, for a Saturday night game when they're throwing beer on you and you're 15 years old and you have no idea what's going on. There's line brawls left and right, and it's like, wow, like, so this is what it's all about. And I guess that's the thing, right? We're talking about what you want to do. Like, either you got it in your guts or you don't. You know, like, it's one of those things where I mean, you got to want to do that. I mean, no one can force you to do that. And I think you were probably asking your dad, hey, I want to do this. Your old man wasn't saying, hey, Brad, the cuss's for you, right? You're like, yeah, let's do this. You know, and I think if you got a kid like that, like, that's what I'm doing now as a coach and now as a parent, is just like, let's just support some dreams, you know? Like, that's what I think it's all about. Let's support it. Whatever it is that kid wants, let's support it. Let's try and enable that person to do what they can do. And if that means junior B, if that means tier 2, if that means staying and playing youth hockey, and doing whatever that is. I think every family's going to be different, but try and get in that kid's back pocket and really help them out. I think that's the biggest thing. And I said that to my mom too now, like having kids of my own, like it was insane looking at that level of commitment. Like I was an only child, maybe a little bit different, but like, wow, like to let her kid leave at 16, like came with me at 15. We moved at 14 to go to a different province because of hockey. Like that's pretty nuts, that's pretty nuts.
Yeah, that's an incredible commitment. And with me, I loved hockey. So you got to remember you're asking a 15-year-old. I was like, yeah, let's do it. It'll be awesome. Like I was gung ho and ready to go. And that's part of being young is you don't know any better and you're a little bit naive, right? So, but I loved to play hockey. I loved it, and it didn't matter where it was going to be. Like I said, if it was junior A, junior B, I just like, they want me, sure, that'll be great. I get to play a lot, great. Let's go do it. I didn't know. I wasn't, and that's where as parents, so you gotta help guide them. You know what I mean? It's because especially now there's so much. It's like propaganda almost. Like they lure you, and there's agents, and there's all these things that are happening at such a younger age. To me, it's scary. But so inform yourself as parents and do what's right for you and your family. Don't be pushed or swayed any one way, and don't make them feel guilty. Anybody starts making you feel guilty for not doing it, or your kid's going to fall behind, or your kid, it's insanity. No, it's not going to happen. They'll figure it out. They'll be fine. And they use scare tactics. It sounds like, again, it's not my kids are too young, but I've heard some stories already. They try to almost scare you into, if you don't, they make you feel bad as a parent. And it's insane. Support them, to help guide them, be informed, ask questions. And if someone's too pushy, it's probably not the right place for you to go.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, I in general think the hockey world is a really good world. I think there's good people involved in it. But I don't know what the right word is. I mean, everyone has their job to do too, right? Which is to get kids to fill programs, to do this, to do that. So I think that authenticity level and just getting in that right environment, like a coach is important. We're going to get into coaching too, but like having that relationship, especially with the parent and the kid going in there that you trust one and respect this person is big. And I think, because this is your kid going somewhere, right? It's not something to take lightly. So make sure that relationship is there and that you do believe what you're hearing is the truth would be my suggestion on that one. Let's go back to Swift Current though. So Swifty, like my goodness, I guess you're in the cusp, and the cusp to Swift isn't that huge of a difference when it comes to like size of town and that sort of scenario, but it is a heck of a different league. I wrote some names down there. Rick Girard, Ashley Buckberger, Ladislav Cohn. You had 4 guys your rookie year that scored 40 goals, all of which went on to play some professional hockey. Was there any, I had Pat Falloon, Ray Whitney, like these guys, like, so like my eyes were like, holy smokes, like this is a whole different universe, right? Did you kind of have that at the beginning, or was there anyone that you looked up to, or did anyone that took you under your wing in that rookie year?
I think Ashley Buckberger was a guy who did for sure. He was a good man. And I think he had been there as a young guy. He knew what it was like, and he really helped me out. I lived with Rick Girard my first year. So he helped me a ton. The whole league, it's a massive step from junior B to the Western Hockey League, and makeup of teams were a lot different back then too. Just, there was, you had to be, you couldn't play timid, let's put it that way, out on the ice. And so, the year before, the Swift Current had gone to the conference finals and lost to I think it was Portland Winterhawks. And so they had built this team, but they still had a really good team. But yeah, you're going to Swift Current, it's minus 35. I was so lucky. I had unbelievable billets. I stayed in the same billets for 4 years, all of 16 through 19. And they were like second parents to me. I know some guys who weren't so lucky, where the experience was real tough, but they took me under the wing like one of their own, treated me well. I still keep in touch with them to this day. They were just quality people that really took care of me in some really crazy years of your life, 16 to 19. And so I was very fortunate that way. But yeah, Ashley Buckberger, Rick Girard, there was those 2 guys really helped me kind of through that season, and it was a crazy year.
Yeah, I had a chance to play with Bucky in my first year pro in Carolina, and I ended up playing with Ladislav Cohn later too. So, anyways, I know
Yeah.
both those guys personally. But you raise a good point. I want to touch on leadership here in a little bit, but I love the fact that you brought up billets, and we haven't had that as a topic conversation. But like, what a massive deal that is! Like,
Mm-hmm.
and like you said, like I just talked about, make sure you have a good relationship with the coach. If you're going anywhere, if your parents are going if you're thinking about having a kid, like that's a deal breaker and a deal maker, right? Like that environment. And there are some horror stories, and generally, again, usually they're good. Usually they're good stories. Usually the teams do a good job of finding good people, but like, my goodness, if you don't have good people and you're away from home and you're away from your parents and there's no food in the fridge, or these people don't care about nothing, or whatever the case may be, it's hard enough playing junior hockey, let alone trying to deal with not great billets. So I want to send a big thank you out to mine, because I had amazing billets too, 4 years in Spokane, and they were sly though. Tim Speltz knew, like he knew when he had the good billets, right? Because they had Frank Evans, who was his 20-year-old year. He had lived there for 4 years, and he was about to leave, and I came in right at the end of that season. My 15-year-old season in Penticton. So they're like, why don't you go stay with Frank? They asked Dick and Sue if I could stay there. And they knew that, we'd build a relationship that year. And instead of them saying bye, that they would come back again next year. So they kept Dick and Sue on for a few more years because of bringing me in there. And boy, like what a difference maker though, to have people that are making you pregame meals. And she had fresh cookies and was worried about whether I was up or not. And like she was my mom. She was my mom without my mom being there. And that totally helped me. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, I would take that very, very serious if your kid's going to be staying at someone else's house. And again, those are I heard about guys who didn't have food in the fridge or they had it was just maybe not the best living conditions. And I think maybe some of them were trying to make some money off this, which it's impossible. I think they're only getting $300 a month, and as a teenager, I mean, you're eating $300 a week almost. Really, you're just you're hungry, and so that you better do your homework there too, and just try and create that relationship with that billets if that's where your son or daughter is going to be.
No doubt. So you, throughout your career, you were a leader. You always had a letter on your chest. Were you the captain of the Broncos at one point?
Yeah, a couple of years there. Yeah,
your last 2 years, hey? So after your draft year. So I want to touch on that, but I want to talk about your draft year first. So the first year was tough, right? For all of us, 16, you're coming in there. You had a good team. I don't know how much you were playing. You weren't playing. The stat line didn't really show a ton of success with goals and assists, but you're getting your feet wet and figuring it out. And then year two is your draft year, and you ended up going third round, I think, to Ottawa. Is that correct?
Yep, I was. Well, at that point, yeah, it was third round. I think it was 53rd overall, which
so almost
was
a second round pick.
Yeah.
Or a second round pick now, yeah.
Yeah.
So you had a good draft year by all accounts. That's a great placement. How did that year go? And then just talk a little bit, because I know you went back in the draft. I think that's like people are really interested about the draft year. A lot of young guys, like what does that mean? Like what did that mean to you? Were you just doing your thing again, or were you aware of what was happening? Was that a big deal to you where your ranking was?
I think I was aware of it. It's how much you were fully aware of it. You can get drafted. And again, that's an age where I think you're starting to realize like your dream could come true, and then people are talking to you and going, hey man, like you could get drafted. I'm like, really? I'm good enough. And so it was starting to kind of come together there a little bit. And you start to realize that, all right, this is, you got to take this serious. And so, yeah, I would say I was aware, naive, but aware for sure of what was going on that year. I got drafted, went to the draft, did that whole thing. And, and so got picked by Ottawa. And then, I ended up going back in the draft. That story is, I got traded. I was after, I think it was my first year World Juniors. I got traded to Colorado, and then I was in that organization. But if you remember then, like they were young. I mean, they were Adam Dedmar, I was Peter Forsberg. They were so. They offered me it was a fine contract, but we decided that we weren't going to sign there because all their forwards were young. Like I couldn't look and go, man, I got a chance of making it in the next 5-6 years. So we respectfully declined their offer and said it wasn't money. It just, I didn't see room for me ever for a long time. So, they actually did say, look, if you're available at the right place, we may redraft you. But I never in a million years thought it would happen. I was dating a girl. I was going to Mexico, and it was the day of the draft. I didn't go to the draft this time. And before I took off, they were already in the second round. I hadn't been drafted. I landed, and my agent called and said, hey, you got drafted. I'm like, all right, who picked me up? They said Colorado. And I was like, what? Like, I couldn't believe it. So I thought my world was over, right? But when you peel it back, they liked you, obviously. It was the fourth round this time instead of third, but they liked me. They thought that there would be a place for me. So it's funny how things work. And I ended up staying in that organization for almost 7-8 years. I was in the minors and finally cracked the lineup in 2001. But yeah, it was a weird, and now apparently I was the example for all the other guys that didn't want to sign. I didn't know this till later on, but they're like, if you don't sign, we might draft you again. And I ended up signing for a little bit less, but they really could have put the boots to me for signing bonus and different things, and they didn't. They were pretty fair and what they offered, because it wasn't personal. It wasn't about a money thing. It was just, we didn't think I could crack it, and it all worked out, in the end. And like, always go back to, if you're good enough and you work hard enough and hopefully the stars align, you'll find a way.
Good for you, though. I mean, that was a brave choice. To re-enter, right? To say no, and just because you never do know, right? And you were one of the kind of, like you said, you were a trailblazer, essentially. Not many guys were doing that. It doesn't happen very often.
And it wasn't like I said, it wasn't because I thought I was this special player. I just really, I looked at their lineup, even as a young man, and went, man, where do I play with this group? Like, they were just so good and so young. So I think that's why the relationship was salvageable. There was no anger or animosity held on either side. It was just, when they redrafted me after I got over that a couple of days, I was like, all right, well, they like me. I know that. So, and then we just, you roll your sleeves up and go to work.
Yeah. Do you have any stories from your draft year? You said you went to the draft your first time. A lot of guys first of all, I know there's tons of kids out there that would love to have the opportunity to get drafted, of course, and to be one of the guys that gets to go there. And the draft interview days each team is so wildly different. Did you have any takeaways or any memories from your draft day experience?
I just remember, I had 4 or 5, team meetings. You go in and there's a boardroom table and nothing crazy, no unexpected questions. I actually felt like Ottawa was my best interview by far, believe it or not, when I went to the draft, and felt like I was most comfortable, and they seemed the most enthused about it. I also did fly-ins too. Like, I remember flying to New York and doing like physical testing and stuff like that. I remember flying to different areas and doing that. But I wouldn't say anything out of the, or everything was just so, you dream about it, right? You're at the draft. It's like, this is the stuff you watch on TV, and a lot of guys that I'd played with in World Juniors were getting drafted in the first round. So, so it was a lot of fun, like, watching guys you knew and played with, and they were getting drafted high, and so, yeah, it was in Edmonton. It was a crazy experience, and just young and foolish, and probably having a little bit too much fun, but yeah, I'm glad I went, but then I didn't miss it the second time. I would, if you're not a sure shot first rounder, I'd tell parents, don't go. It's just so much can happen, and there's nothing worse than watching a kid sit there and just sink in his seat, and he's falling down the draft rankings and stuff. So it can be crushing, you know what I mean? But I get why they go. I was that kid too. I was excited, and it was just a very unique opportunity.
Yeah, that's to put yourself back at 18, 19. It's funny. I mean, now at 43 and you're in your 40s, when you're 19, you don't feel young, right? You feel old and mature, and you feel mature, and like you got it all figured out, essentially, right? You got the world by the tail, and life's been good, and you're this good hockey player. But man, like walking, I remember just being, and I felt that I was a pretty confident kid. But walking into those draft rooms, when there's sometimes 10 scouts in the GM, and they're all circled up in this big semicircle, and you're in the middle, and they're just peppering questions at you. And some of those environments, at least for me, like I knew some of these times, like, why am I even in this room right now? Like, you guys are peppering me, you know what I mean? Like, this is it's a hostile environment, and you're facing these men and they're firing questions at you. It's just a pretty wild scenario, I guess. I mean, it is something that you're lucky if you get a chance to do it, but I kind of chuckle now looking back on it, like, you know, what they put these 19-year-old kids through. But I guess it's with good reason. I mean, like, you're investing in the future. They want to find out about you, right? What you're made out of, how you're going to withstand the fire, whatever the philosophy is there for how these teams handle it. But
I think it's a lot worse now. I think it's a lot more intense. You know, I hear just what our staff does, and you know, the scouts, and you know, they bring in certain people to personality assessments, to all these different things, right? Because again, it's a billion-dollar industry now, and they can't afford to make mistakes. You know, that's kind of where they're at, and any information they can gather, you know, is important, and a lot of it does ride on character, integrity, all these things that are real important for an athlete or just a person in general.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's great you bring that up. I mean, that goes with the leadership aspect, but that goes with what I'm talking to these guys about is your character matters, like not just a little bit, because one, it's going to make you a better player, but two, like, people are going to find out. You know, like this day and age, like, we could have hit a little bit back in our age, right? Like, people weren't lifting rocks up and, you know, opening closet doors, right? But now, like, they're talking to everybody they can, right? If they're going to invest in you and they're going to waste, or not waste, they're going to invest a pick, whether it's first, second, third, fourth, or fifth. That's an important pick. You get like 7 or 8 picks around in a draft, right? Like, these are high stakes scenarios. These guys are playing in a big dollar business, and they're going to do their homework. That means asking your coach, talking to teachers, talking to whoever they can to find out about you. And, you know, the more authentic you can be with that character, and you're not putting on a show, but like actually live what your dream is. I mean, that's a big deal. And I think that's the part that I think a lot of these young guys are kind of missing, like that separates you.
Sure. Well, and someone told me this a long time ago, I don't remember who, but, and I'm sure everybody's heard it, but it takes a lifetime, you know, to build basically a reputation, and it takes one moment to ruin it. And you know, so and now in the days of social media and phones and videos and YouTube, and I'm probably way behind, there's something way ahead of that, Snapchat and all these different things that are going on. I'm not a social media guy, but you know, you make one wrong decision, and really it's unfair, because you know, I think of all the silly things and stupid things I did as a young man, and you know, it's not about living a perfect life, but you know, if you want to live your life, you know, with integrity and character, and people are watching, and it's super important, because you take any team that's ever won, and generally they're very, very close-knit group they ooze character and oozed integrity and oozed all these qualities that teams want, and that doesn't mean that you can't recover from a mistake, because you absolutely can. But you know, every decision you make is important, and you know, one wrong decision can really ruin a lot of good work that you've put in.
100%. You can string a lot of great days together, a lot of good years, and you have a bad week, and you know, it can all go south. And that's sort of where you want to have that good foundation and that good support group too. I talk about having a good inner circle, right? The guys you're hanging with and who you're doing with, that can definitely help. One of the things I find interesting, because like I think it is a word that gets used, one character, I think, you know, I mean, a character guy, right? We want character in our room. We look for character people. If you were to say that, or if I was to say that, or if Mike Babcock's to say that, I think everyone has a little different idea of maybe what that means in the hockey world and in the hockey universe. When you say character, like what are the traits that you think exemplify character?
Well, and again, it's probably mundane and redundant the way I'd come up with it, but you know, someone who's character, top of the list for me is integrity. You know, someone who's selfless, somebody who's, you know, that old adage where, you know, what is he doing when nobody's watching? Do I have to harp on this kid to get in the gym? Do I have to, you know, we've asked him to lose 10 pounds. He says he's doing everything, but he's up a pound from where he started. It doesn't add up, you know. You know, all these things, and we're a team sport, and we're not tennis, we're not golf, we're not, you know, it's not a single man sport. So you can't just think of yourself. So when I say selfless, it's you really, the best players in the world do have this swagger and arrogance and almost selfishness to them, but they understand how to win. And I was very privy to see that firsthand in Colorado with the Joe Sakic's, Peter Forsberg's, Ray Bork, Patrick Waugh, Rob Blake, Adam Foote, Mike Keane. These guys were, I think at one time there was 5 Hall of Famers on my team, and I got to see it up close. And nobody was ever grabbing the stat sheet after, and nobody ever was worried about one thing other than winning the cup. It wasn't about making playoffs. It wasn't about getting points. It wasn't about, they were driven to win as a team. And I've been in some unbelievable team meetings and watching these Hall of Famers go at each other for all the right reasons and challenging each other and accountability like you've never seen. So when I saw the best in the world do it, in some really intense meetings, again, for all the right reasons, because it was the only standard was winning. That's it. And it wasn't about, no one cared who got accolades. No one cared about goals and assists. It was like, how are we going to win this thing? And watching that up close was, I mean, that's just, those are things that I will take to my grave. And it's a big part of, I was lucky. I was just lucky to be a part of an environment where winning was number one. It was only about team, and you had the best players ever play the game almost on one team. It was nuts. Like when we played Detroit in the conference finals, my first full season, we played 3 Game 7s in a row. So we had, our staff. Well, then on their side, they have Yzerman and Shanahan and Brett Hall and Dominic Hasek, and it's insane. You'll never see that. Pavel Datsuk, like Nick Lidstrom, like you're missing Hall of Famers, right? So out of 2 teams, you might have 14 Hall of Famers. That's insanity. It's insane. And so, and they were very much known people that were in that room. I know it was the exact same thing. It was all about winning. And that's why they were so successful, because they had the elite of the elite, but they were driven to win, and they were selfless. And I've heard it before, and the one thing, winning takes sacrifice, and that's what it is. Not everybody can be at the forefront all the time, but there's no unimportant part. So when you're part of something like that, it's special, and it gets harder and harder in this world now, because it's a very me first world now, with social media and everything's so transparent about stats and arbitration. And as soon as you go to contract time, they throw it in your face if you don't have the stats and the numbers. And social media, that's all analytics and it's all driven. So, you kind of fight yourself. And I can see as an athlete how it's hard, but that selfless sacrifice, team first character, that stuff it's as a coach, coming from a coach, when you get a player like that just gets it, it's awesome.
Well, and it's invaluable too. And that, you talk about your reputation, like that follows you too. Like guys know that, and as much as the stat line is nice, and I mean, sure, guys pay for goals, and guys are going to play for plus minus, and that happens in your league. It's a results-driven sport on an individual level, but you can play a long time being a good character guy and being a guy that takes care of others. And I don't want that to be forgotten or misunderstood, because it is a real deal. I want to chat a little bit. We're jumping all over. I do want to get back to World Junior. I think that was important, but I wanted to, since we brought up your rookie year, and playing with those guys and being in that environment and seeing that, like what an opportunity, like you say, and something you'll never forget. How was it being a rookie in that environment? And I'll just preface this by, I've told this story a couple of times. Like the first 4 NHL organizations I was with were all losing organizations at the time, struggling to make the playoffs. Guys were very individually driven, right? Protecting their jobs. I didn't know it at the time. Like you said, a little oblivious, right? All I was doing, I was getting called up or trying to make a team. I was just trying to make a team, right? Like I didn't really understand the culture or the dynamics of what was happening. But then at the end of my career, after I went to Germany and came back and got a tryout with the Red Wings, I went to Red Wings camp, and it was night and day.
Yeah.
How it felt there, how it felt to be included, what the conversations were like, the inclusiveness, how guys were making me be a better player. Like I was like, holy man, so this is what it can be like. And now at 40, like looking back, like if I was to start an organization, if I was to be a coach, like I don't know where that necessarily starts, where that seed is that initially gets planted, but if you're a young guy and guys are like wanting you to be better on that team and not trying to get you out, but want you to produce and be a player, like, did you find that was what the environment was like there for you? Like, did you feel included? You were wanted to be a part of things and to contribute?
Absolutely. And that's what made it work was when I tell you that they understood how to win. So I was really just a bit part. I mean, I was told by the head coach, like, I'm there to just rest our top players. And so you don't feel that important at the time, but through the players and through from Rob Blake to Sakic to Forger, any of these guys, it's like they knew when to talk to you and make you feel part of it and make you feel like you are important. And whether I was playing 4 minutes or 6 minutes, my role, again, the one thing that I always tell kids is, there's many ways to make it. Everybody that gets to that level in NHL pretty much was their best player or one of the best players. You look around that locker room and you go, okay, he was NCAA scorer. He was top goalie in college. This guy was Western Hockey League top scorer for his team. This guy, you're now European. This guy was world championships at 15, played in Russia. So everybody it's the best of the best. So you can't, and then you got the elite of the elite. You got when I played, it was the Sakics, the Forsberg. So how do you fit in? How do you make yourself relevant? And so a lot of times it's what are you willing to sacrifice? And I go back to that, and what are you willing to do to try and make a career? So I knew I had to adjust my game, or I never was going to play. So I had to start being more physical and do some of the work that nobody else wanted to do. And it was blocking shots. It was, being a little bit of an irritant and going out and maybe pissing people off and scrapping the odd time and just doing the things that, how do I make myself relevant on this team and important? And these guys in this team were unbelievable and their timing was impeccable, where maybe it wasn't going as well, or they'd be like, hey, that was awesome last night. I loved how you ran over somebody or fought. Like, they really appreciate it. So you actually, is small a role as you had, you felt important on the team. And I always, and I do believe that there is no unimportant role, because even if you make a run in the NHL and you go to playoffs and you go to the Stanley Cup Finals, at some point, you really are only as good as your weakest link, because there is no unimportant play. It could be a face-off, could be a shot that you didn't block that went in, and that's a 3-2 goal you lose. It's game 6 that's over. It's a face-off you won, or it's a face-off you lost, and everything's so magnified by the time you get to that point, and there's going to be injuries, so you're going to get inserted in situations. So that preparation meets opportunity. If you're not prepared, you set yourself up to fail. But if you prepare properly and you've done everything in your power, you won't fail, because there's nothing more you could have done. It's when you have regrets when you don't prepare properly, and so it's just there's not a guy in that team at that point that's not important, and that's what galvanizes groups as you go forward. So it's understanding that you're fortunate to have a career, but being a part of something like that it's unbelievable.
Well, and that's where I think you're talking about the best players, because I mean, there's two ways I want to go on that. I think hockey is a weak link sport, not a strong link sport. Like, meaning you need your bottom end players to be good if you want to be great, right? You can have a couple stars, but you're not going to win a championship with a couple stars in hockey. There's too many components there, right? But the stars are still very important pieces. I mean, you need to have those guys. But if those guys aren't good leaders, and if those guys aren't inclusive, and those guys aren't your hardest workers, like, that's where you're having issues. And I wonder, like, not that we want to bash Atlanta, and maybe you won't even bash Atlanta, but like going from that scenario in Colorado to this group of Hall of Famers, this perennial cup contender, and then ending up in Atlanta where it wasn't as successful, and I'm sure not as many wins. It can't be as much fun to be around there. Like, what did you think was missing, or what did you try to do there to emulate what was happening in Colorado?
Well, honestly, when I first got picked up on waivers there, it was like the Twilight Zone. It almost felt like two different leagues,
right,
where I just came from to kind of the standard and what that was to where I went. And that's not bashing Atlanta, it's just where they were in their organization at that point. it was, it's indescribable, really. It was like a complete 180 of what was going on. It was more, guys were more worried about their bonuses and hitting. I watched guys throwing their helmet coming in after 6 win, and I was confused. Like, I didn't know. I come to find out he's mad because he didn't get any points that game, and I was like, what? Like, it was so different. So, and I only played the last little bit after waivers, and there was a lockout, and then I came back the next year and played there. So at that point, things were starting to change. They were trying to address some of the culture issues, and they had Scott Mellenby was there and some different players that were trying to change that culture. So, but those unfortunately, those leaders that were there, they learned how to lose, and they were, whether they admit it or not, they're okay with it, and to a certain degree. And so they just didn't understand what it took to win. So, and how could they? I mean, that they really were just a subject of their own environment. I don't think it's that they didn't care. They just didn't know. They didn't have that environment around. They didn't have those guys that won and understood the demands of what it actually took in the preparation and the standard for winning. And so I don't think that they had ill will. I don't think that they weren't good teammates. I just think they just didn't get it. And so yeah, Atlanta was a whole nother experience. But again, I learned a ton from being there. And I appreciated Colorado so much for what I was able to go through. And at the time when you're in it, you don't, that's just what you do. And then all of a sudden you're taken from that environment into another one, and you go, oh wow, this is different, but for me, it was a good move because I got to play more. I wasn't a very good player, but I got a third line role. I got to be a check-in role. I got to play with Pascal Dupuis and Bobby Olik on a third line and just penalty kill and play third line minutes and play like 13, 14 minutes a night. So selfishly, it was great because I got to play more, but we didn't win as much. But, we kind of turned the corner. We made playoffs one year. We didn't retool the next year enough to kind of keep up with the NHL and be a good enough team to win. But yeah, like going through both processes was, for me, again, I take all this stuff as a coach and learn. I learned from both sides, one, how fortunate we were to have that not only that much talent, but the quality of players and people. And then the other one going, wow, there was some big gaping holes here. What was going on there? And then you'll never have a team like Colorado again. You can't, not in the cap system. It's just impossible. It's like the old Detroit teams. There's no way you could afford to keep those players around in the cap system. So unless that system changes, that'll never happen again. But the standard and the selflessness and the integrity and those are things that you can translate into and what winning looks like for any organization.
Well, I guess get back to your leader. I mean, there's leadership characteristics that people have, and some people, some people have an innate knack for it, I think, but I do think it's something that is learned. And if you're curious about leadership, that you can definitely soak up stuff from your environment. And like an example, I think, is a guy like Crosby, and I'm just going to use him as an example. And I know there's others, but I mean, he's in that locker room at 18 years old, and who's in there with him, right? Like Mark Recchi's in there with him, Mario Lemieux's in there with him, Tokic's in there with him, right? Like these guys that know how to win and know how to lead. And so when he gets his letter on his chest or whatever it was, he was young, I think maybe 21 or something. Like, he's had an example, right? He's had an example. He's won something. He sort of sees what it takes. And then I think about a guy like Connor McDavid, and I have no idea what kind of a leader he is or he isn't. I know he's an amazing hockey player, but you go into that environment where they haven't won forever, right? There's no real example there, and now he's supposed to create this culture at 20 years old and know what it takes to win a cup. I just think that that's unfortunate and a little bit unfair. To have that type of like you said, that standard, and what a privilege it was for you to be in that environment with these guys that knew what it took, right? Now you have this resume in front of you of like, wow, now I get it, right? Because it's right in front of your eye.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly can't comment on Connor's situation, and he's obviously a tremendous player, and Edmonton has gone through some hard times, and they've kind of been up and down the last few years. But I can only go from personal experience, but certainly being subjected to an environment of winning and that being really the true only standard when you're there, it fosters that that selflessness and in an environment where it's not about you. It's not about one guy on this team. And so the more you're fortunate to be in that environment and see it and feel it, and really it's feeling and going through it, I say this coaching all the time, there's no substitute for experience. Like, you just have to go through things, and good or bad. And like most time, you learn the most in failure. But again, at some point you have to learn, and you got to take the next step and grow from it. And sometimes you need someone to teach you that and what that growth looks like. We went through it here, and this is my 10th year in the organization in Columbus. And so I've been through I was in the minors for 4 years as assistant and head coach. This is my 6th year here now. And since John Tortorella has been here, watching like the standard and everybody talks about culture, and everybody talks about accountability, and everybody loves accountability until it's them. That's kind of how it is. But to watch him come in and really make some tough decisions and the standard for our team and what that looks like. There's no wiggle room. These are our values. This is what we stand with. This is how we work. And whether you're the top scorer or the guys on the fourth line, it doesn't matter. This is, we all know that there's different rope for different guys as far as skill set. That's, you have to do that as coach. That's your responsibility. But once you've implemented values and standards for your group and work's non-negotiable, that's what we are. That's who we are. That's our identity. That's when you start to see some growth, I think, in your organization. They take the step, and that's the same with players. Like, once you self-assessment, self-accountability, everyone says look in the mirror, and that's a hard thing to do. A lot of guys don't really want the real answer. I say a lot, players interview well, they say all the right things, but when we talk about leadership and the best leaders to me, if you didn't say a word to me, I'm going to know basically what you're all about, because your actions are going to speak way louder than your words. You can say all the right things, but if your actions don't match up, you're phony, really, right? No. So, but if you didn't say a word to me, and I'm watching your habits in the gym, I'm watching how you prep for a game, I'm watching you in a game when things get tough, and you're backing up your teammate, you're encouraging your teammates when things kind of they're going bad. How do you handle yourself in that situation? There's no analytics for that, and everybody wants to put a number on things, and that's why as coaches we're always fighting these analytics people because of it, because there's all these intangibles that are happening behind the scenes, and you go, no, this guy, he's important. Yeah, he might be a 30-point guy, he's not a 60-point guy, but what he brings to my room, what he does for my young guys, what he does for our team and our message, you can't put a value on that. And so leadership really it's going to be like most things in life. It's going to be your actions and how you're doing it and how you're carrying yourself, without you having to say one word. And then I think that's one of the most important takeaways I took from Colorado, is just their actions and their words, they matched up. It was like a puzzle that fit perfectly. So if we failed, it wasn't because guys weren't all in and they didn't do their job.
Yeah. No, I think that's great, because guys get wrapped up in that too, like thinking they have this idea, an expectation of what a leader is, what that incorporates. And I think in the movies, everyone's glued to their screens these days. You see captains, and they're the ones doing the speech in the room, and they're doing all this kind of high profile stuff. And I mean, some guys are like that, and that's fine. Some guys are vocal, but you definitely do not have to be a vocal leader to have a C on your chest. Like you do what you just said there. You play the game the right way. You prepare properly. You work properly. That's an example, and that's all a coach, that's all an organization is looking for, is the right example. And that has nothing to do with what's coming out of your mouth, right?
No, not even close. Like I said, there's a lot of guys that have really good lip service, we call it, but you'll challenge him and you'll give him an opportunity to grow. And put the ball in their court, and within a week to 10 days, if they don't see results, they may resort back. And like anything in life that's worth having, it takes time. You know what I mean? You don't get shape in a week. It's these things take time to develop, and growth takes time. And so, but there's some kids when you're watching, you just know they're going to succeed, and it's not goals, assists. It's not, but you're like, that kid's he's got something. He's not going to be denied, because you can just tell he's not saying much, but his actions are telling me everything he's supposed to be doing. He's going to be all right, and that's a huge thing. It's it's a driven athlete that understands that what's important.
But I think that keeps, because I mean, you did. I mean, you might have been the leading scorer in Swifty that one time, but you weren't. Throughout your career in the minors, you weren't a guy throwing up huge numbers, right? Like that wasn't you. You weren't first line PP, and everyone's looking to you to score the overtime winner, right? Like you were that glue that did the right things at the right time, and we're that piece in the locker room that I think you're talking about. But like, what? It just makes me think a little bit about how guys like the trait of humble. I think humble is a good word to use. Like that self-awareness to know, regardless of how good you are or how good you aren't, that there's always room to grow, right? There's always room to get a little better, and to be a pro, right? That's essentially, like, to me, that's almost a definition of a pro, right? Like doing the right things to make sure that you're getting better. And I think there has to be some type of a humbleness there to have that mindset, right? That like, yeah, there's room for me. But if you can't shine the mirror, that's where I think coaches are amazing too, because one, you have to develop yourself. And that's one thing I teach. And one thing I didn't get until I got out of the game, unfortunately, is like, my gosh, like have this raw, authentic look at yourself, right? Where are you coming from? What do you need to improve to grow? And that might not be your stick handling. It might be your perseverance. It might be your resilience. I don't know what muscle it is that you got to work, but there is some things that you could find, right, if you want to look. Do you find that with the best players, like the guys that stick around, like the guys that are there for a while, that they have that kind of that thirst, that curiosity to keep improving?
Well, yeah, humility actually, it's a huge piece of it. But like I said, it's that self-assessment, it's that self-accountability, and some guys you can tell when they're talking, they get it. As coaches, you have directed questions. You usually are going down a path and you're searching. Like for me, when I've talked to someone, it's not just the words, it's body language. It's a feel thing when you're going, does he really believe what I'm saying, or he thinks I'm lying to him, and I try to tell players it's never personal. I like all these guys and I want them to succeed, but I'm going to be honest with you. The players deserve to hear honesty, and they need to know what's wrong. Like, how do I fix it? So you try to give them solutions, and sometimes at the end, players are passing them. It's tough. Again, that can go a whole nother direction. But at the end of the day, it's honesty and self-assessment. If you don't have that, you're gonna have a lot of troubles, I think. For any athlete, and that's just in life in general. If you're always looking to pass the blame, if you're always pointing the finger, if you're always woe is me, or this coach doesn't like, I'm going to tell you right now, it's not about the coach. The coach is going to play if you're good enough, unless have some discipline issues or something, away from the game. But at the end of the day, I don't know many coaches that aren't going to play their best players in those situations, or put the best 20 guys on the ice if they think that they can help them win, especially at our level. So, but if you're humble enough to assess your game without being too hard on yourself and being negative, because there's that fine balance too of parking things and getting better and making sure that the next day it's like, all right, I need to improve. But if you can do that, you're ahead of the game on a lot of athletes.
One topic I like, and I think that you can probably speak to this pretty well, is that relationship with a coach. Like there's always going to be a divide, right? Like there's the coaching staff and there's the players, and I know that I think that divide is a lot less than when we played. Brad, I think some guys are trying to get a little bit closer to minimize that divide, but there's going to be one. But I remember back when I was playing, I didn't think that it was for me to build the relationship with the coach. It was almost for the coach to build the relationship with me, which I'm trying to talk to guys about, that these relationships are key, right? And like, you had a guy in your life named Bob Hartley that played a pretty significant role in your career, right? It was a guy that liked you, or you liked, however that worked, right? There was a relationship there, and he had you play for him in Colorado, and he was the head coach in Atlanta, and now you're on that other side of it. Like, is there something that, I don't know, like, is there any advice to players, like, other than, of course we want everyone to work hard and that's going to earn some trust, but how do you earn the trust of your coach? How do you build that relationship and have that guy be a fan,
Well, things have changed. It's not, you used to just kind of do what you're told, and they yell at you, you just do it. You don't really question what's going on. And I'll go back to this we just talked about, your actions. Your actions are going to speak so loud, and don't be afraid. If everybody, it's about the whys now. Well, why are we doing this? Why am I here? Why am I on the fourth line? Why am I not on the third line? Why am I not on the power play? Why? So as coaches, it's your responsibility. Tell them why. First of all, because that's the world we live in, and if you don't want to do that, you're going to fail. So it does make you work harder, and you're accountable as a coach too. You have to make sure that he may not like the answer and he may not agree with you, but that you better be prepared for that question. But two, I'll go back to it. The way you handle yourself, the way if I challenge a player and I'm saying you need to work on A, B, and C, and at my level, at the pro level, I don't have time to hold your hand, and it's not, this isn't Pee Wee, it's not Adam, it's not, it might not even be called Adam anymore. I don't even know what the leagues are called. I haven't done it. So, but I used to, when I coached in the American League, I tell them what was wrong. I'd try and give them some help. I'd give them 2 or 3 things to work on, and then I'd watch them the next month. If I said, I want you to work on the wall, let's work on your shot, grab some of your teammates, and I'd let them know, as a head coach, I got 23, 24 guys I got to worry about. I'm dealing with management up top. There's a lot of things. It's not because I don't like you or I don't have time for you. It's because there's a lot of different guys I gotta be attentive to, plus the team scheme and all these things and planning practice. And so, but you watch the players that once I've given them direction, and some of them last a week, and if it doesn't work, then the next 3 weeks they're in the same boat. They haven't worked on it, but they're surprised when they come back and I go,
okay, well, we cut off there just when you were just saying, I don't know when you cut off, but you were saying that you would give a guy some instruction, and some guys they're not in it for the long haul. Like you watch them and maybe they say they want to get better or they try to, but they're not really doing what it takes.
Yeah, it's all about the investment, right? So again, I'm not at this level, and it's different at different levels, absolutely. But at our level, you're still dealing with young men, absolutely. But there has to be some responsibility taken on your side as the player, and you're not going to have a coach can't hold your hand through everything. So it is the coach's job to give you some solutions to what the problem is, but you're going to have to take the initiative in your own career. So, and I would watch that closely, really closely, with certain guys that, again, they're complaining about A, B, and C, but they're not doing D, E, and F to get better. So right away you go, all right, it's not that important to him. So he wants me to take it serious and give him opportunity, but he doesn't want to put the work in, right? So, and again, we're talking about, I'd watch for 30 days. This isn't over a whole season. And most guys can't even sustain it for a week, let alone 4 weeks. So I always come back to this: how important is it to you? If you want it, then treat it as such. And if you and again, we'll double back to the self-assessment and the accountability. Are you honest with yourself? Are you putting the work in? Are you putting the time in? Are you all in? Is it important to you? And if it is, you'll put the work in, and I'll see it as coach, and lo and behold, your game will improve. I promise you.
Right.
It's not going to go backwards. And so, and this is what I always go back to. If it doesn't work out, you leave with your head high. You have no regrets. You did everything you could, and you have peace about it. And a lot of guys that maybe the careers didn't work out, it's easy to pass the blame. It's easy to go, well, this guy didn't like me. This coach didn't like me. The organization didn't like me. They didn't put me in the proper role. There might be some truth to that for some players, but I'm going to tell you this: the majority of them, it's excuses that, and their self-assessment's not so great.
Right.
And the guys who are at peace with it, they go, look, I did everything I could. And they can chuckle about it, and that's good. And they have peace, and they move on, and they'll probably do really well in life because it's okay. You know what I mean? It's not the end of the line where, hockey's a massive part of my life, but it's not who I am. Not even close, So it's important that you take it serious. If it's important to you, make it important.
Yeah, right. No, I think that's great. Yeah, I mean, and the other thing that I think guys don't get, especially if you're in the minors, right? Like you're in the minors, you're getting a phone call as the head coach saying, hey, what's Joe Smith up to?
Yep.
And you're like, hey, he's really working hard at his game. I like what I see out of him. This guy's going to be a player. He's maybe not producing right now, but I like him. I'm bullish on him, right? Like,
Yep.
or that call goes, hey man, I gave him some work. I don't know where this kid's head at. Like, you mean like that? Like that's your reputation again. You're talking about. That's your brand, right? Like who you are, what you're about. People are watching, right? And and that's going to supply you opportunities too as a player. And that's the thing. Obviously, I tell everyone that you ideally you want it to be authentic, right? To come within. It's important to you. You're aligning with your goals and dreams. You're doing the work that's required. But even if you can't make it authentic, do the work. You know what I mean? Even if it's just for somebody else. If you want to be an NHL player, you think you do the work that you're told to do, right? Like it's kind of a no-brainer, right? It's a heck of a lot harder to do it. Yeah, a heck of a lot harder to do it. Option 2, option 1 makes it easier. But anyways, I just think that's a wild thing. Like, and something that I honestly didn't get. Like when I was in the minors, I thought it was like all about producing, right? Like, okay, if I'm the guy, right? If I'm the guy, they're going to take the best player and I'm going to get called up. And it wasn't like I wasn't working away from the rink, but I was not nearly as professional I should have been, right? Like showing up early, right? Not with bedhead, right? Like taking that side of it serious, working out at the rink instead of doing something else somewhere else hiding. Like that was like my style of doing stuff, right? Like I was like, hey, 42 goals, what's going on, right? But like you said, like there's an interpersonal aspect to that, right? The coach needs to see. Coach needs to see that you care other than what's going on the ice. And I think sometimes guys don't either understand it or they don't really get it, you know?
Well, practice habits, right? So, we're creatures of habit. So the thing about what people get away with at the American League that they don't at the NHL is that some of them do have a little bit more talent, and so they get away with it. You know what I mean? It's just so maybe they should be an NHL player. They don't put the time in. They get away with it and can produce, but then they're shocked they're not getting the next chance, and they can't figure out why. So it's the cycle of disappointment, and then that's where it gets into the blame game, right? Well, I'm the top scorer. Why am I not? Well, that's one part of it. But generally, when someone's getting called up from the minors, they're not going to be put in a top 6 role. It's just that's kind of the reality of it because they have really, really good players that they're paying a lot of money to do that. So, but I tell them this: put the work in. Now you're there every day. Now you're seen every day, right? So if you can add more tools to your toolbox, and I got that from Brad McCrimmon, God rest his soul, who passed away in a plane crash in Russia. He coached me in Atlanta. He had a great career. But one thing he taught me is you always want to be putting tools in your toolbox. So, if you're a good winger, practice face-offs. Try and be a good face-off guy because, it's something that you can add. If you're a power play guy, try and be a penalty killer. Ask the coach, can I kill penalties? Try and improve in different areas, and then you have more weapons, right? You have so you have to find a way to get there. If that's a 4th line role, fine. But now they get to see you every day. Now they get to see your work ethic. Now they get to see you shoot a puck and go, man, this kid can fire it, and someone gets hurt, you get an opportunity. I go back that preparation meets opportunity. Now you're prepared. You're there. You've worked. You put the work in. You've given yourself your best chance to succeed. If you're cutting corners, you're playing the blame game, and you can't even do the simplest thing of like just put the work in. You set yourself up to fail. That's the bottom line. And coaches see it. It's hard to really fool anybody anymore.
Yeah. No, I agree. Do you find like I was talking about making an impression on a coach? Like I know, I'm coaching. Adam still does exist, Brad. That's what I'm coaching here. I'm coaching our Adam talk. Yeah. And what I love in that role, and my wife's a teacher too at dance, and we have some discussions about coaching and trying to make people better and what impacts us, right? And for me, it's like a guy who actually will come to me and ask, how do I get better?
Sure.
Right? How can I improve? And then obviously like watching them do the work, but even that question alone, how can you help me get better? Or what do I need to do? Like, bet you even on the team you're at right now, or like your experience in the minors, like not many guys ask, correct?
Well, I think it's twofold. I think they don't really want to ask because they don't want to really hear the answer, for one, or they might hear the answer and not want to put the work in. So that's, again, it goes back to self-assessment and how important it is to you. And they don't ask because they're not really sure they want to hear the answer. And half of them probably know it, but they don't want to know it. and
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They're almost, and some of it's a personality thing. Some guys are introverts or whatever, but at the end of the day, as a coach, it's your responsibility to make people at least know that it's an open door policy. Come and ask. And I tell them, if you're not sure, come ask me. I will tell you the answer.
Right.
I will give you the answer. You may not like it. I will give it to you.
Right.
And we'll come up with a plan, and I'll do whatever we can. But some guys, I really think they don't want to hear the answer. And again, this is at a higher level, obviously, but yeah, go ask. I had a coach tell me, you ask the question, I got to give you an answer. It's the truth. So it's spot on. And why am I not playing? Well, let me tell you, you may not like it, but he's got to answer the question. So
Yeah.
if you're not sure, ask the question, but be ready for the answers, and any player, come prepared. Come prepared, because some guys come in guns and blazing, and all of a sudden their tail's between their legs and they're leaving, and it's just because, again, self-assessment maybe wasn't totally there.
Right. No, well, that's the mirror. A mirror is a valuable thing if you're able to look at it. I know we've ran on here, and you're actually driving home now, Larsen. I appreciate your time. You've said the word preparation.
My safety is at risk right now.
You've mentioned the word preparation. Now you're preparing for a domestic issue at home. But when it comes to preparation for hockey, like what does that mean to you, and how did you incorporate that? Because I do think that that's something that's not taught, Brad. Like, I think that, coming up through junior, our preparation was, we eat a pasta dinner and then we have a nap and then we show up to the rink, right? And like, there really wasn't much more to it, just that we were following the footsteps of others. But like, I do think getting the mind ready, getting your body ready, getting all those different facets, getting ready tactically, getting ready technically, like, there is a process to that that's professional. Have you learned that, or do you teach that, or where do you think that comes from?
Well, by the time you get to this level, it's a little different. Like, and I'd say a lot of guys even fall short of that. As a coach, you're always wanting a certain level of commitment, and so preparation. I mean, there's in season and off season. Obviously, there's totally different preparation here. So, as a coach, right away, you do testing, and it's not because you're worried about the scores. I'm going to be honest, you want to see if they prepared. If they can't even do the simplest task of preparing and hitting a certain body percentage fat and trying to hit a certain goal on their lifting and their run and different things, right away it's a red flag that they couldn't even prepare unless they're injured. I mean, and again, we're not stupid as coaches. You understand some guys can run, some guys can't. Some guys are strong, some guys aren't. Like, you get all that. But if you're not seeing improvement, if you're not seeing a guy, you've asked him to put on weight, or you've asked him to lose weight, or you've asked him to do it, and you see no improvement, right away I'm scratching my chin going, well, what was he doing? So you're behind the eight ball. So that's the off-season stuff. In season, getting your proper sleep. You know what I mean? Look, none of us are saints, and I certainly wasn't when I played, but there's a time to run, and there's a time to make sure that you're focused. And again, I'll come back to how important it is to you. You know what I mean? Peer pressure. Can you say no to your friends going, you know what, I'm good, man. I'm going to bed. We got a big game tomorrow, or we got a game in 2 days. And you're putting the right foods in your body. Practice. Practice is important, especially at the minor league level. Practice, we're creatures of habit. So if you're going to one-leg shots all practice and not take, you're on the power play, you're not really hungry on retrievals, you're not really hungry on scoring goals, and you're kind of just putting in the time, there's a real good chance in the game you're going to be just putting in time. And so if I'm asking for 45 minutes of dedication, like literally when I ask, from a coach's standpoint, you're there all day. From a player, you're coming, everything's prepared for you. You got to go in the gym for maybe 30 or 40 minutes at the most. This is in season. And then you got maybe a 45 to an hour minute practice. We don't practice much more than 45, 50 minutes, but it is required. There's pace, there's execution. Like, you've got to be on your toes and a focus. So I'm asking for like an hour, 15 hour and a half of your time each day. And one of those days is probably a day off. So 6 days a week, I'm asking you to focus for 90 minutes. Seriously, right? I can put you in front of social media for 4 hours and these guys will knock it out of the park. You know what I mean? And they are focused, you know what I mean? Or a video game, or, so, and I know this is getting old, but is it important to you? So if you just dial in for 90 minutes, dial in, because you're going to improve. You're going to see improvement. You're going to get something out of it. And so if you put the time into practice and you do it with some kind of intensity, and hey, we all have our down days, we all have tired days, we get that. I'm also realistic, but if it's important to you, you're going to prepare properly, and that preparation starts in practice. It starts in the gym. It starts away from the ring. You spend way more time away from the ring than at the ring. And I'm not going to hold your hand, and I'm not calling curfew, and I'm not saying what you're eating. I'm trusting you're doing the right thing. So do it. And now more than ever, there's things in place. They tell you exactly what you can eat. They know your dietary restrictions, that, foods that are hurting your body, foods that are helping your body. We have sleep doctors that come in. So everything's available to you. You just have to apply it and do it. And now you have your best chance to succeed. So that's what preparation is to me. If it's important to you and you take it seriously, you're going to put the time in and do it properly.
Yeah. Do you see it at your level, like guys that do and guys that don't?
100%. Yeah. And the guys that don't, they're excuse makers, right? It's you don't like me, you don't know how to use me, you hate me. Like, that's my favorite. I'm like, why would I hate you? I don't hate you. I don't even know you really away from the ring. You're a great guy. I'd love to go have a beer with you, or have a coffee with you. I just don't like how you're playing. You know what I mean? That's really what it comes down to.
Right.
It's not personal. I tell them it's not personal. It's not. I like you. I just don't like how you're playing. That's it. And when you can, if you, again, as a coach, you've got to develop relationships with your players too. That's your responsibility, and to get to know them a little bit and understand them. And like, what makes Jason Podolin tick and what makes me tick is probably two different things, so that is part of your responsibility. But, at the end of the day, enough of the excuses, you know what I mean? The excuses, it's easy to fall back on, and with excuses comes regrets. That's I live by that, and you don't want to have any regrets.
Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree, and it's such an easier way to live too, right? When it is in line, and I think that's why I use alignment a lot, and self awareness. I think those are two things that I have definitely learned later that are such valuable tools. And again, like it is what it is. It's what you want, right? Like you said, it's like, what do you want? And so the idea of of our conversation really is to provide this conversation to two guys that went through it differently, right? Had different ideas, different experiences, and now are saying, hey man, this really works, right? If you can apply this, if you can do this, if you tell me you want to be whatever you want to be, an NHL player, do this, try it.
Yeah.
Right? You mean, try it, see how it works for you, because it's hard to do. And we're not saying it's not, but it works. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the thing. It's like, it works, man. It works. And because it is hard to do, not everybody's doing it. So you're going to stand out. You're going to separate yourself. People are going to notice, right? Like, it's just like, it gives me goosebumps even just talking about it, because unfortunately, it is not that common,
Well, there's playing in the NHL or playing a few games or carving a career. And the reason why guys carve careers is because they're consistent. Like, that consistency in your preparation, that consistency in your attention to detail. And that's why guys play 8, 9, 10, 12 years. That's how they do it. They're sustainable. And, anybody can come up and play 5 to 10 games. The honeymoon phase is easy. You're full of adrenaline. You're excited. You'll go through the wall. You don't care if it hurts. But it's funny how guys will hit a wall. And then all of a sudden the honeymoon phase is over after 10 or 12 games, and you see their game start to dip, and then it gets a little bit tough. Then ice time gets taken away, and then they're not sure how to handle it, and because they're not prepared. They're not prepared for it. And really that's why guys, you'll see some players, and I'm probably a good example, where they'll look at me and be like, I was way better than him. And they were in a lot of areas. But I'll tell you what, no one worked harder. I made sure that I was prepared, and if I didn't make it, it wasn't going to be because I didn't put the time in or the work in, or I didn't dedicate myself to the sport. So I could walk away and go, you know what, I just wasn't good enough, and I could live with that decision, and I'd be okay with it. Yeah. But there's a lot of players that were way better than me, but they didn't want to put the work in. And I watched a guy. This is a true story. I was in Hershey. I won't say the player's name, but it was towards the end of the season. This guy was one of the leading scorers in the league, and he got called up after the game. And it was my first or second year. I can't remember. I think it was my second year. And I'm just dying to go to the NHL. You know what I mean? Like, just whatever. and they came and like, hey, he just got called up, and he's like, ah. And I'm like, he's like, why? He goes, next time tell me, so that, because, I'm leading the league in scoring right now, and I can just say my back's hurt or something. And I'm like, what? So it was more important for him to try and lead the league in scoring so he could make more money in an AHL salary than it was to go, because he had been shuttled up and down before, he's an older guy, and but he didn't want to change. His comment was, if they don't like me for how I play, then I don't want to be there. And I'm like, wow, like it just blew me away. Like I would have gave my right arm just to get a game, So it was, hey, that's where he was at, and that's fine with it. But, don't fool yourself in thinking that you can take shortcuts and try and be a consistent or make it a career. It's hard. It's really hard. Yeah. And the guys that put the time in, and they're sitting there and you're going, man, he's just there. I'll guarantee you there's an appreciation from the coach, his teammates, that what he does every day. As a coach, you don't even worry about it, because you're like, I know he's prepared. I know he knows his role. I know he's a good teammate. I know what I'm getting from him every night. You can't put a value on that. And again, that's putting the work in every single day and being consistent in not only what you're saying, but your actions, and you're prepared. And that goes so much farther than being the top scorer, but you're all over the map. You know what I mean? And numbers are big. Everybody wants to be that. But not everybody can lead their team in scoring.
Yeah, exactly. That's a result. That's a result thing. I talk about that too a lot, right? Like those are results that can or can't happen. Like, and it depends on where you're going. It depends on a lot of things that sometimes aren't in your control. Like how many minutes you're playing, maybe who you're playing with. But you control that other stuff that you're talking about, the stuff, your practice habits, the stuff when you're not at the rink. What kind of teammate you are. Those are things you can control, and those are things people notice too. And I think I lost you again. There you are. You
there? Sorry, I lost you.
You must have went through a tunnel.
Yeah, I did. I went through a bad spot. I always do. I was going to warn you, but it was too late.
No, that's okay. No, we'll wrap it up. I mean, this has been awesome. There's so much we didn't even talk about World Junior, which I wanted to. You wore the C for your country and won a gold medal. Under Babcock too, which I did want to touch on, but I mean, whatever. Maybe there's another time. I know that was a real special time for again, a couple of Vernon boys to play on the team for your first one. To win gold in Boston, and you were able to come back and wear the C and win another one. What an honor. I'm sure that was a highlight for you in your career, was it not?
Yeah, I used to watch it as a kid, the World Juniors, and just, that was bigger than the NHL, because I think I could associate with the younger men, back then, and watching them and playing for Canada. It's like, I remember making it my first year, and I had no business making it the first year. I think there was like 4 or 5 guys in the NHL that just didn't get released by their teams. I think that was the only reason I made it. So, and that team was with you, and we were pretty good. We just kind of steamrolled through that tournament pretty well. The next year was a little bit of that was with Babcock, and he did make me captain that year, and we'd won 4 in a row. So I was so nervous, man. I didn't want to be the guy that dropped the ball. You know what I mean? So I remember we won it, and we were on the bench, and we were celebrating in the room, and then I kind of just snuck off to the bench, and actually Babs came out too, and we're sitting there, and he goes, we got it done. And I'm like, yeah, like it was such a relief. It was hard to even enjoy it. It was just like, oh, thank goodness we won it, because I did not want to be the guy that screwed this up, and I think he felt the same as a coach, So yeah, it totally different experiences. But yeah, like play for your country, you can't beat that. That's pure hockey, pure love of the game, and to be part of that was incredible. Yeah. Did you
follow it last year at all, or do you still look at it from time to time?
I do from time to time. It always depends on our schedule. I try to catch the games as like we're going from city to city or wherever we're at. But yeah, I always take an interest in it. I'm always pulling for Canada and trying to watch, the games when I can, for sure.
Yeah. Well, you talking about that and like the weight of that expectation, right? I mean, it's much different than, you were with us, like you said, you're a fourth line role on our gold medal team, and then the next year you come back and now you're the captain. Completely different experience for you. Different level of expectation. All the rest of it. More media demands. I'm sure there's a ton of stuff there. But then I look back at the team last year, and that poor captain. He had the penalty shot that he missed, and he had to remove his Twitter account, and that just my heart breaks for him. All he wanted to do was win. It's just
insane.
How did you feel about that whole thing?
Well, again, this is that world of social media, and everybody's got an opinion, and 98% of them don't deserve to have an opinion on it. You know what I mean? You don't think that kid felt awful. It's the armchair player and the armchair GM. It's really easy when you're not in that situation, but that's the environment we're in right now, and I do feel bad for the athletes a lot of times. And even as coaches, you go through it too, because the analytics world, they have a number for everything. And, for every positive 3 numbers, there's 2 negatives that they want to clean up, and they want that number to look perfect. Everybody wants it in this perfect box with a nice bow on it. And it's very rare that it happens. So, everybody wants it kind of that black and white. This is what we need to do. And there's so much gray in our sport because it's a team sport. There's 20 guys on the ice. There's, in one shift, you go offense to defense 10 different times, So that poor kid that got ridiculed and beat down, and he's got it's insane. He's a young man. He's doing the best he can. Trust me, he wanted to succeed in that moment. I guarantee it. It's unfortunate, but that's, I guess that's just part of the world we're in right now, unfortunately.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, you do, I'm sure he learned a lot from that. He played some games last year in the NHL. It sounds like he's a real good player. And I hope we did learn something from that, because we usually do learn in the downsides. But boy, I'm sure glad we won. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Well, I'm telling you, even in not in the, there was not nearly the level of social media, but just the expectations. It's, as a young man going into that, there's this euphoria of making the team, and then there's a reality of oh, okay, well, we're the favorites. It's and now things have changed a little bit. The parity is obviously, countries have caught up, and it's not like Canada it was a win or bust. But now you look, it's a little bit different. But yeah, the expectations on a 17, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, it's crazy. And when the country is watching, you know what I mean, and everybody's transfixed on the TV in Canada. I know that for sure. So it's a lot to take.
No, that's fun. Well, thanks so much, Lars. I really enjoyed the conversation. I knew you'd be great. You're always recognized as a great guy in the room, and and even looking at your career there, however, almost 300 games I think you got to.
Yeah,
right?
just a little bit over with playoffs. I think 300 plus games, and just feel very 400 in the minors, 300 in the, I did a little bit of everything. It's great.
No, and I love that too, because we didn't get a chance to really go into it, but kind of 3 years in the minors before your first big chance, and then you were down after kind of a full season, had to come back again, and I just love that story of perseverance, and when I'm chatting with guys like yourself, it's, there is a way, right? And again, you said it tons of times, right? If it is important to you, you can make it important, and usually. Absolutely. Things can work out, and just keep doing the right things. And now you're still in the game, and you're with Colorado. I know you're learning a ton from Torts. I know that's another whole conversation we can have about the whole realm switching to coaching, but I really do appreciate how much time you've been here. And I know a lot of guys learned a lot. So thanks so much, Larsen. Best of luck with the season, buddy.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. It was great.
Awesome. Cheers, buddy.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today for Up My Hockey with Brad Larsen. Anytime we have an opportunity to listen to an NHL coach, an assistant coach of 6 years in the biggest league, the best league in the world, I think we have to be grateful and humbled for that opportunity to listen to his wisdom and his perspective and his philosophy on what it takes to be great. So Brad did not disappoint. I loved that conversation. I enjoyed that discussion. I'm sure you guys had a lot of takeaways as well today. So thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing, and thank you for supporting the podcast. A lot of you have taken the time to let me know that what you think of the content, that you appreciate what we're putting out and what we're trying to accomplish, and you've made it a part of your listening sequence. And for that, I thank you, because without knowing what it is you like or what it is you want to hear, it's tough to provide that. So Thank you once again for getting the podcast out there, for telling your friends about it, for subscribing, for sharing, because that's how this thing's going to grow, and that's how more parents and more athletes are going to be able to hear the message that's going to allow them to be the best that they can be. So thank you again, and tune in next time, next week, and we have another amazing guest on Up My Hockey. Have a great day.